So welcome. In this lesson we want to continue on plant nutrition 2. So in the first part, when we looked at plant nutrition, we mainly focused on the process of photosynthesis, right? And when we focused on the process of photosynthesis, we also talked about the site of photosynthesis, which is the chloroplast. But when we looked at this photosynthesis, we talked about its equation and what happens. So in the equations and what happens, we talked about the aspect yekuti photosynthesis yedu ine requirements ayo, which are what we termed to be the raw materials. And we say that these raw materials, we have carbon dioxide and H2O being our raw materials. And we also talked about the conditions in which photosynthesis has to take place. And we say that it is light as well as chlorophyll. Are we together? And we also talked about the fact that photosynthesis produces starch. So since photosynthesis produces actually it produces glucose, and then this glucose is turned to starch, and then this glucose can also be turned to various other substances. That's what we talked about tikataura kuti anions aid mafat of end products of photosynthesis. And in today's lesson now, we want to primarily talk about this process, its site. Where is the process happening, and what is it that is behind where it is happening? And so today we want to look at the structure of the leaf. Since the leaf is structured to make photosynthesis happen, so that's for today's lesson. So trukuti susu, the structure of the leaf redu rakamira rakadai. So if we are to take this part, which is the cross section of a leaf, would take this one, would obtain something like this, which is this chatrikona chese chand. So pane chatrikona chese chochichi, right? If I am to zoom in so that we can clearly see, tikutaura kuti isusu pane this, right, we have the chloroplasts. Our chloroplasts edu aya ari kuwanikwa ari mune the type of cells that are called palisade cells or palisade mesophyll, right? When you say a palisade mesophyll or tissue, it's just a group of cells which are palisade-like. And as you can see, you see that these cells are arranged more in a rectangular way, sorry. They are more like in a rectangular way. That's the order in which they are arranged. And this order, it presents it with more like right angles. So when it presents with more like right angles, that allows enough light to penetrate and to reach all the chloroplasts that are found within the mesophyll cells. So one adaptation that we'll find there is that the mesophyll cells, they are arranged at right angles. That right angles, it allows them to get enough sunlight. That's the position or orientation that allows them to get much sunlight. And the other thing we notice here is that each one has numerous chloroplasts. In other words, pane ma chloroplast akawanda pane each mesophyll cell. So that also enables the leaf to have maximum rate of photosynthesis. Then tabva ipapo toenda pamusoro apa, we have what we call the upper epidermis. And from the upper epidermis, we have this layer here. It's called a thin cuticle. So this thin cuticle is a transparent layer which is on top of the leaf redu. Saka this one is transparent, so since it's transparent, it allows light to pass through. And also the upper epidermal cells, they allow light to pass through since they would have a transparency. And then from there we can then go to this section here. So this section here is normally called the vascular bundle or the vascular tissue. So that's where we find xylem and phloem. So as you can see here, if we are to divide here, we have smaller ones on this part and we have the bigger ones right on this part, right? So these ones that are bigger one top, call them the xylem, and these ones that are at the bottom, which are more like smaller spread ones, we call them what? The phloems. And it saka apa ndo pane yedu xylem yedu, it's responsible for delivering H2O. Saka ndo panopinda nemvura ichazoita sei ichizonospreada zvayo ichizoenda kune mas different what cells by osmosis. And it saka iri kupinda what through the xylem and then it spreads to the leaf, then yochinopinda pane each adjacent cell ichienda yakaenda. And it then the food that was produced, it travels again. The food that has been produced, it travels again, then it enters into the phloem. Painopinal phloem, then it is transported to several parts of what? Of the plant. Then after having known the xylem, the vascular bundle, we also want to know the other part, which is the spongy mesophyll. So we have the spongy mesophyll here. So the spongy mesophyll, it has these type of cells here. They are called spongy cells. So these cells normally they are irregular. So when we say that they are irregular, they will then create spaces within them. These spaces. So these spaces are what we normally call air spaces. These air spaces allow the diffusion of what? Gases to be there. So we have our CO2 and also our O2, which would want to then move outside the what? The plant. So we are saying that O2 is moving outside, then CO2 is moving inside whilst photosynthesis is taking place. So it has to move via the air spaces within the spongy mesophyll. Then after that, we then have the stomata. So the stomata is the opening here. So that's the stoma or stomata. The opening here or the stomata allows gases to enter and gases to leave. But as you can see, the stoma is surrounded by two guard cells. So these two guard cells here are the ones that help in what? In opening and closing of the stoma. So normally the guard cells edu anoshanda achiti iwo pakange pane light intensity yakawanda, they have some chloroplasts which absorb sunlight energy, which then causes them to open. So once they open, the stoma or the space that opening becomes bigger. Then kana yaita bigger space iyoyo, magases edu akwanisa kupinda nekubuda zvakanaka or freely. And that would increase the concentration of carbon dioxide and also release the oxygen concentration kuti idzike painobuda outside panoitika gaseous exchange. And so that's it about that plant cell. So panapa pavangu highlighted the mesophyll cell, kuti mesophyll cell redu, it's palisade mesophyll. We have the palisade cells redu indizvozvo. and what we just had to know was Ishima numerous what? Chloroplast. So answer, this is what the typical we typically think of when we think of the plant cell, but it's just one of the types of the plant cell that are found in the leaf, and it so which means that among my plant cells akatosiyanawo ne this one, and it anenge akasiyana. So every time we talk about maybe plant cells, we give reference to the palisade cells so much to the point yekuti tinofunga kuti plant rese ringori made up of palisade cells, but no, rinewo mamwe macells arinenge rinawo. So that's our structure for what? For the leaf. That's the structure for the leaf. So we'd want to go to the next part, and still on the structure, maybe apa pava explain an issue, a pathway of what carbon dioxide when the leaf is photosynthesizing, and it so kuti ma carbon dioxide molecules edu, they move through the what? The stomata. So number one, higher concentration, there is higher concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere compared to inside the leaf. So kana kuno kune low concentration, kuno kune high concentration, we are saying that the gas rinoita diffusion, it diffuses into the leaf down the concentration gradient. So number two, CO2 diffuses through the cell wall plus cell membrane of the mesophyll cells, then dissolves in the what? Cytoplasm, and diffuses into the chloroplast. So pathway yawo panopinda umu ndizvo acha diffuse through the what? The cell wall, and then they diffuse through the cell membrane, and then paanozopinda mukati anobva dissolve cytoplasm, because mune some water that's there. Then after it dissolves in cytoplasm, then it diffuses into the chloroplast where it gets used up. So that's what mainly happens on the pathway of the carbon dioxide molecule when the leaf is photosynthesizing. And so pekutanga, you have to talk about the concentration of carbon dioxide being higher outside the plant than inside the plant. So the carbon dioxide will diffuse into the plant via diffusion down the diffusion gradient, and then from there it crosses my cell walls as well as cell membrane. Then after crossing cell walls and cell membranes, what happens then? It then diffuses into the cytoplasm, because the cytoplasm contains what? My fluids. And then after that, yakuchita sei? Yakuchibva yanopinda muchloroplast, then action rovaraitika. Then so the pathway can be summarized like this: and atmosphere to air spaces around the mesophyll tissue, to the leaf mesophyll cells, and then to the chloroplast. Then now let's look at the structure of the leaf. Apa patikuda the function of each of the molecules that are there. Anditi saka pekutanga todatanga ni the waxy cuticle. So the waxy cuticle, that's the layer, and ndataura iri panze pekunze kunzani. So it is a protective layer on top of the leaf that prevents water from evaporating. And then we have the upper epidermis. The upper epidermis, they are thin, transparent, to allow light to enter into the palisade mesophyll underneath it. And so the waxy cuticle is transparent, allow zvese kuti sunlight penetrate, but sunlight penetrate richienda ku palisade mesophyll, and ndo kune ma palisade cells edu. Then the palisade mesophyll column shaped cells are tightly pegged with chloroplasts to absorb more light, maximizing photosynthesis. That's why you find out the palisade cells anenge ane chloroplast yakawanda sterikandi. Then we go to the spongy mesophyll. When we talk about the spongy, we also talk about the air spaces that are between it. And so it contains internal air spaces that increase the surface area to volume ratio for the diffusion of gases, mainly the diffusion of the gas yedu inonzi carbon dioxide, because ndo iri kunyanyoita sei kunyanyorequire steric. And then we also have the lower epidermis, which is the one inenge iri pasi pasi. And the lower epidermis yedu, it contains cells that are known as guard cells, and the stomata, which is an opening. And stomata is just an opening between the guard cells. So the guard cells edu absorbs and loses water to open and close the stomata to allow carbon dioxide to diffuse in and oxygen to diffuse out. Then the stomata, the opening, that's where the gas exchange takes place. It opens during the day and closes during the night. Evaporation of water also takes place from here. In most plants found in much greater concentrations on the underside of the leaf to reduce water loss. So this stomata tikuti iwo haanyanyowanikwe ari pamusoro peleaf, kuti leaf redu pamusoro paro pobawanika mastomata stericans, but tinonyanya mawanda ari under the leaf. And the reason why they are under the leaf is to reduce water loss, because anenge akavhurika. Kana akavhurika anokonzeresa kuti mvura ibude nemutrites. Then turn to the vascular bundle. The vascular bundle, that's where we have the xylem and the phloem to transport substances to and from the leaf. So the xylem transports water into the leaf for the mesophyll cells to use in photosynthesis and for transpiration from the stomata. Then the phloem, they transport sucrose, the sugars, and amino acids around the plant. So that's the purpose of the phloem, to transport food materials. Then tobva pane the next one, we want to look at adaptations for photosynthesis. The adaptations for photosynthesis, how are they adapted, how are they structured for photosynthesis? And so number one, the leaf redu rine a large surface area. And so we are saying that it increases the surface area for diffusion of carbon dioxide and absorption of light for photosynthesis. So the surface area is for two things. That's for diffusion of the gas redura trukuda, which is what, CO2, and also the other thing is responsible for the absorption of what, light. So we are saying the other thing, which is what, light. So if we want to increase surface area for light absorption, that's the large surface area. And then number two, our leaf is thin, and then kuva thin kwaro kuno allow carbon dioxide to diffuse to the palisade mesophyll cells quickly. And so since the cells are thin, they will allow what, carbon dioxide to diffuse. The distance inofana move on carbon dioxide becomes minimal, and then there's an ability for diffusion to take place. Then to end up on a chlorophyll, which is the third one. Chlorophyll is available and it is abundant, and it via my chloroplast. Then that chlorophyll, it absorbs light energy so that the photosynthesis can take place. Then we have a network of veins. So the network of veins allows the transport of water to the cells of the leaf and carbohydrates from the leaf for photosynthesis. Water for photosynthesis, carbohydrates as a product of photosynthesis. Saka food yedu iri transportwa via my veins, water yedu iri transportwa via my veins kuti iriche or most of the parts of the plant. Then we go to the stomata, which is the opening. So this one is the fourth one, this one is the fifth one. The fifth one, the stomata, the opening, it allows carbon dioxide to diffuse into the leaf and oxygen to diffuse out. So stomata is for gaseous exchange. And then we have epidermis. The epidermis is thin and transparent. And reason why it is thin and transparent is to allow more sunlight to reach the palisade cells. Then the wax cuticle is what is thin and made of wax, so that it protects the leaf without blocking sunlight. That's the 7th one. Then the 8th one, the palisade cell layer at the top of what? The leaf. Saka, because the palisade cells are positioned at the top of the leaf, that maximizes the absorption of sunlight, as it will hit chloroplast when this in the cells directly, because anenge ari kumusoro. Dai anga ari kuzasi zvainetsa ndizvo, they have to pass, light has to pass through a lot of things. So because they are at the top, light will easily pass through, and it ichibva yanonoenda pane mapalisade cells edu. And then we go to adaptation number 9 on the sponge layer. The sponge layer now has air spaces, right? These air spaces allow carbon dioxide to diffuse through the leaf, increasing the surface area. Then lastly, we have number 10, adaptation, vascular bundles. So the vascular bundles, they are thin, thick cell walls of the tissue in the bundles help to support the stem and the leaf. So when the stem and the leaf are supported, photosynthesis yedu inonyatsoitika zvaita zvinenge zvakanaka, anditi? Then let's go to the other thing. We want to look at the need for mineral ions. The need for mineral ions. Why do we need mineral ions in what? In plants. So photosynthesis produces carbohydrates, but plants contain many other types of biological molecules, such as proteins, lipids, and DNA, which is the nucleic acid. So as plants do not eat, they need to make these substances themselves so that they can use those substances. So carbohydrates contain elements such as carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but proteins, for example, contain nitrogen as well. And as certain amino acids contain other mineral elements too. So which means that carbohydrate ya produce ichabatanzwa ne other minerals are absorbed in plant, then it would make several what elements, to make several products or substances, right? For example, apa potachiti nitrogen yanonobata the carbohydrate, and then it forms what? Amino acids. And other chemicals in plants contain different elements as well. For example, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll contains magnesium and nitrogen. Saka, why is it that a plant requires magnesium? It is so that it can help it produce what? More chlorophyll. Are we together? Why does a plant need nitrogen? So that it produces more chlorophyll. So that it can produce more chlorophyll, it would then in turn have more of the photosynthesis, and then more photosynthesis means what? More of what? Of the plant producing what? Food that can be converted into what? Into different things. And so this means that without a source of these elements, the plant cannot photosynthesize or grow properly. Plants obtain these elements in the form of mineral ions, actively absorbed from the soil by the root hairs. As you can remember, takataura ions they are absorbed by the root hair cells by active transport against the concentration gradient. Then minerals in term used to describe any naturally occurring inorganic substance. Saka any naturally occurring inorganic substance, it is named a mineral. Then effects, let's look at the effects of mineral ions deficiencies. So when you talk about deficiencies, we are talking of lack here. So if there is lack, what will happen? And it so yellowing between the veins of the leaves, which is called chlorosis. So that will be chlorosis will be caused by the deficiency of magnesium. So we said magnesium shanda for kugadzira chlorophyll, right? or iri chlorophyll, like patataura panapa. Chlorophyll contains magnesium and what? Nitrogen. Anditika. So which means kuti a plant rikashaya magnesium anditika richabva raita chlorosis ndizvozvo, whereby the leaves edu anenge asina chlorophyll yakaita sei yakanaka totesa. And then we also needed nitrogen, which is the nitrate ion. So the nitrate ion, in its deficiency, we see that the leaves, they become yellow leaves. Are we together? Yellow leaves. So the difference there is that yellowing of chlorosis is between the veins. Between the veins, that's where we are seeing the yellowing, right? But for the nitrate ion, we are seeing yellowing of leaves. The whole of the leaf would become yellow. So why? Because nitrate ions are needed to make amino acids. So amino acids needed to make proteins for growth. Then here magnesium is needed to make chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is needed to absorb what? Light for photosynthesis. So if they lack those guys, we would find the yellowing of the leaves for magnesium, yellowing of the between the veins, right, which is chlorosis. Then in the other one, the lack of the nitrate ion, would find out it would become what? Yellow. Saka tinenge tichiti ukuku, if it lacks nitrogen, it causes yellowing of leaves. If it lacks magnesium, it causes chlorosis. Then we have mineral ion and their deficiencies to wrap up. So magnesium is needed to make chlorophyll, and it causes yellowing of leaves between the veins, which is chlorosis. Then nitrate ion or nitrogen is needed. Nitrates are a source of nitrogen needed to make amino acids to build proteins. So it would cause standard growth and yellowing of leaves. So I think this takes us to the end of the lesson on plant nutrition. And thank you so much nekuona video. I hope kuti wabata something that can help you in your exam, for your exam excellence.